Good evening and welcome to the Pompey Politics podcast.
I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sansbury.
Well, we're back on our home turf tonight, aren't we, Simon? Back in the wonderful borough of Cosham. Is it a borough? Ward?
No, it's a.
I'm never really.
It's a. Let's go for ward because it's not a borough. It's not honest. Don't start a separatism movement just because we're on the mainland. Don't start that shenanigans. We can't have border control at Hilsey lines.
Well, is that the old misspelling, isn't it, of the Portsmouth Independence Party? If you misspell it right, it can. What have they ever done for us? But anyway, before we go down this Pythonist road, you've been out and about this week and at a local meeting in Cosham, and we're lucky enough to have one of the sitting Cosham councillors, Councillor Lee Mason, joining us this evening. Welcome, Lee.
Good evening. Pleased to be here again. Second time, so I can't have done too badly last time for you to get me back.
No, absolutely. We love a returning guest. There's a league table. I think if you're on 5 times, we probably should get you a mug, but we haven't commissioned those yet. So that's something for us to look at.
Yeah, that's part of the 2023 plan to start the Pompey Politics podcast merchandising. But
I look forward to the upgrade on the mug then.
Absolutely. So Simon, what you've been out and about? Talk us through what's occurred.
Yeah, sorry, you make that sound like I've just been wandering around the streets of Cosham. Yes, Wednesday, a chilly evening, but a well attended evening at the local church hall. Was a residents' meeting with the local police team, hosted by Councillor Mason, and also in attendance was Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones. So despite it being cold, very, very well attended. And there were various things said by residents that we'll get into in a second. We've even got a couple of interviews from 2 of the people that actually spoke at 2 of the residents that actually spoke at the meeting. But yeah, it was a very interesting evening, and there was more than a spattering of all of the Cosham councillors were there, and indeed some other councillors from other wards or some other candidates from other wards were also there to give moral support. So it was a good old team showing for Team Blue.
And Team Red were there as well. They didn't say anything, but they were in attendance.
So Councillor Shah, one of our councillors in Cosham, was also there. So he was there as well. So it was good. I didn't. I think there was one of the other ward candidates for Labour was there, but as they haven't necessarily all gone public yet, so we don't know. But in the mentions of future candidates for the May local elections, we'll of course be doing our offer to do online hustings for in any ward in any of the 14 wards in the city where any 2 candidates can say yes and agree on a day. Then we'll do an online hustings for them. So watch this space, and we'll start filling those in. But the nominations don't close until 4 p.m. on the 4th of April. So some people might be a little bit shy to say that they're confirmed as a candidate, but you might be able to tell from social media that they're a candidate in waiting. So watch this space. But yes, so shall we hear from 2 of the residents that we had there, Ian? Should we kick off with them?
Yeah, it might be worth us just taking question 1 first, playing those 2, just looking at the way they form. So just the background as to why the meeting here.
Yeah, sure, no worries. That's fine. So Lee, what was, as we've said, I was there. What was it that prompted the meeting on Wednesday? What's behind it?
Back in November and December, I did notice there was a few posts up in the Post 6 Facebook groups and the Cosham Matters Facebook groups, and people were complaining about different problems they've had. And also, while I'm out knocking on doors, speaking to people, we had a lot of people saying they're concerned they've either seen someone try and door handles or they've had this happen to a friend, and it was a reoccurring theme. So whilst I was passing it up to Donna, she actually really loves to meet people, likes to get out there. That's part of her way she operates. Is she's very good in person. So I approached her and emailed her, asked her if she would be willing to come and do a residents meeting so we could put it direct. I booked the church hall. I printed off the letters and trudged around delivering them. There's just opportunity to get people involved so they can put their concerns straight to the police and straight to Donna. And she does it all across the county with lots of different councillors to ask her to. So it's just opportunity to actually raise it direct.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, I think it certainly gave a different, because I've been to other meetings, other similar meetings before. I think a couple of years ago, I went to one in Drayton. And I must admit, it does give it a different air to actually have the police and crime commissioner there, being able to directly answer questions, as well as the local police officers, because as you'd imagine, there's, to some degree, there's kind of like a political element to the questions, and to some of them there's a process and a policing kind of element to them. So, you know, in that respect, that's, you know, that kind of works. So yeah, it was certainly good having her there, and certainly worthwhile. So yeah, so good to hear that. Obviously, those voices have kind of prompted some sort of prompted that action. So two of those voices were two of the people that spoke, were local residents, Martin, and local resident Brian, both of whom shared their stories they shared them in the meeting, but we've interviewed them afterwards and cut together basically what they've said, so that our listeners can hear them. So we're going to play them now and kind of hear it in there, so that people can hear it in their own words. But Martin's story talks about literally his story starts from him talking about he just got a call from his wife to say that she was on her way back from shopping. And kind of
went to the meeting really just to see how the police were moving forward with crime prevention, etc., but also to voice my opinion and frustrations at the time with an event that happened just before Christmas. Now, it was actually during the World Cup. I was watching a game in the evening. It was about 9:15, and we have a Ring doorbell and also CCTV around the house. And my Ring doorbell went off, so there was obviously somebody on our drive. I assumed it was my partner's son coming back. He sometimes comes back and puts stuff in the garage. But he didn't actually come in, so I gave it about 20 minutes or so, and then he actually did come in the house. And I asked him whether he'd been on the drive about 20 minutes previously, and he said no. So I then went on and checked the history on the Ring doorbell, and there was a lad came onto our drive, large coat, hood, balaclava, but you could only see his eyes. And he was shining a torch into my partner's car on the drive. So I took a snapshot of the image of his face. I then checked the CCTV on the house and recorded the video when there was two lads walked past the house. They were looking into cars with torches, and one of them came back and then came onto the drive. So my partner, she was quite obviously very concerned and a bit edgy. She said, well, we need to let the police know. And I said, well, there's not much point in ringing 999 because there's been no crime committed. So I rang the 101 service that the police had. And I got an automated message informing me that they had a large volume of calls at the moment. You could either wait on the line or you could email Hampshire Constabulary. So I thought, okay. So I came off and I emailed, I went onto the Hampshire Constabulary website, lodged a report that there was a crime I thought could be happening later on. It was to Lee. I uploaded the video clip and the screenshot and, sent that off to them, expecting, naively, an immediate reply. It was an automated reply which informed me that thanks for your inquiry, and we aim to deal with your case within 2 working days. which surprised me quite a lot. I was quite annoyed that, you know, in order to report a crime, you have to wait up to 2 days for some sort of response. So the following day, I got a response from the police officer. She phoned me up, acknowledged what I'd sent to them on the email, and then informed me that my neighbour across the road had his car stolen that night. I went to the guy next door, just let him know that I'd called the police, I sent images, etc., which he was pleased about. And I then asked him, how did they steal your car? And he said, well, they actually broke into my house and took my car keys, and then obviously got in the car and drove away. So, you know, when you sit there at these meetings and they give you the latest crime figures and how well they're doing, and these new apps that they've got, and etc., there was no real process of how they were going to actually prevent crime. You know, it's okay catching these people after the event, but obviously people like my neighbours have lost a car, had their house broken into, which is, I'm sure if anyone's experienced that, is quite a bad thing to happen to you. I naively thought that somebody would contact me that evening.
Mm-hmm.
Not immediately, but, you know, or maybe have sent a car down just on routine patrol, just to basically check out what I'd actually logged that evening.
What was the response that you got from the commissioner?
Well, they obviously are very sorry to hear that, and they hear this a lot. They acknowledge that the fact that, you know, at the moment policing levels are not what they should be. And one of the strange things seemed to be that the police numbers were drastically reduced in the evenings and the night time as opposed to the daytime, which, you know, you would have thought that most crimes, particularly burglaries, car thefts, are committed at night and not in the daytime. So, you know, I found that a little bit odd that their priority for more for daytime rather than evenings and into the night. So, but we all know about funding, police funding, shortage of officers, etc. But I think the actual experiences that any resident has on a daily or weekly basis is particularly sort of car theft, burglaries, that sort of thing, a fairly low priority for the police at the moment. If we have a similar meeting in a year's time, it'll be interesting to see whether things have improved in that respect, in how crime prevention is actually working, rather than, you know, the arresting of people after the event, after they've committed the crime. How the particular councillors deal with this aspect of crime prevention, etc., and policing would very much influence how I voted in the local elections, for sure.
And I can see out into the driveway, the hard stand where my wife would park, and there was already some headlights on there. They were facing the wrong way. So I did ask him what he was doing parked on my hard stand, and he said, I'm delivering food next door. I said, well, then you need to leave mine. I said, my wife is due home any minute, and this is where she parks. So first of all, he said, well, I'm just delivering food. I said, no, you need to go now. The way he was parked at an angle that wasn't right to go straight out of the entrance to the drive, he still tried it. But what he did was he drove up onto my borders, through some of my shrubs, and tried to get out. Well, unfortunately, if people know what we call the Highbury walls, on the piers, there's like a four-sided pyramid capping stone, and he caught that with the side of his car, which actually ripped or put a dent through his wing, his passenger door, and the door behind it. But doing so, he pulled half of my wall down onto the pavement. He stopped where he was, I went round and I stood in front of the car and I said, you need to give me some details. He didn't want to. He said, it was an accident. I said that, doesn't matter being an accident. I've now got damaged property. And he was very reluctant to give me anything at all. I stood in front of the car so he wouldn't drive off. And I said, well, if you don't give me your insurance details and your name and address, then I'm going to call the police. In the meantime, my wife had arrived home. She wasn't very happy. She couldn't get onto the drive anyway, and half the wall was lying on the pavement. So she did speak to next door to try and see if there was who they were, because he wouldn't even give me who he was working for at that time. And they said he's a Deliveroo driver. So I went back to him and I said, you need to give me some details. And he said, no, I'm not. He said, I've got to go to work. And in the end, I said, again, if you don't give me these details, I will call the police. My wife had already spoke to 999 and she said, this is not an emergency, but I need some advice. And they told her that someone would come out to talk to us. And while she was talking to him, she said, well, what about the wall on the pavement? And they said you would have to get in contact with Cllr to come and remove it because it was dangerous to leave it lying on the pavement. But they said there will probably be a charge for that. In the end, he just said to me, F you and F the police. I'm going to work. And he got in the car and he drove off. Obviously, I had to step out of the way. We did speak to the police again. All they wanted to know was, had I grabbed hold of him, attacked him or anything like that? And my wife said no. They said, well, that's good, because if he had, we would have been there to arrest your husband. They did say they was going to send somebody round. We waited most of the evening, nothing. Nobody came. We phoned up again and they said, you need to report all this online. So we sat and we done it online and sent off a response. We had to wait a couple of days to get a response, and that response was, sorry, but we don't consider this to be within our criteria. We will not be acting on this, or words to that effect. The frustrating part about it was that they were not interested. They was absolutely not interested. They didn't want the pictures. We told them we had them. They did take the registration. I was lucky I had my son and his friends to put the wall back. But, we've got neighbours along here that don't have sons or daughters,
Mm-hmm.
They're elderly people. How would they have dealt with it? The police are there to help us and basically protect us, and we never got either.
What was the response that you got from the hosts of the meeting?
They said that should never have happened. Basically somebody should have come around. A crime was committed, and they couldn't understand why the response we got from whoever was on the other end of the phone that evening. But she said, okay, we will still look into this. And but she said, it won't happen today. It will happen sometime next week. It's taken something like one of these meetings to highlight what is not happening, for the public. It's wrong, really, because if the public can't rely on the police to do their job, who do they rely on? Are we moving towards people taking the law into their own hands? It'd be terrible if that happens. We need the police to be there for us, and we pay our council taxes and everything else, and we don't ask for much, It's not as if we're phoning the police every 5 minutes because of some silly disturbance. But when we really need them, they were not there for us.
So yeah, quick thank you to Martin and Brian for telling their story. So Lee, when you listen to Martin and Brian's story, so what are your thoughts, and how, as a local councillor and other political activists, how can you influence policing within the local community?
Things do go wrong. I don't think anyone could try and say those were premier cases of policing, but that's why it's important there was a conduit to raise it. Is the older adage, who polices the police? The person who polices the police is the police and crime commissioner. So whilst a few years back I wasn't keen on the idea, and it's like, why are they getting politicians involved in it? Now I've seen how it's been done. It's someone there to actually direct it to be following what the public's interests are, trying to get it resolved around where there are problems, and to independently look at what has gone wrong. And the people that police the police, this policer, is the police and crime panel, which from Portsmouth, it's Councillor Zachary, there's independent members, but each borough or city in Hampshire sends a representative, and then they check to make sure the police and crime commissioners doing the right job. So there is the policing level there. I know myself, I've had it before. Someone had their mobile phones stolen in the Morrisons at the end of the Highbury's, and they had CCTV of it happening. They phoned up towards the police. The police were very dismissive. Oh, it's not something we deal with. I was straight on, forwarded it on to Donna, and she was livid, chased up saying, no, this is something we deal with. And she was straight on it. But things do go wrong, and that's where it's good that you have someone stepping in. And she is trying to make a difference. She's got her 600th new police officer since she took over starting this month process. She's gone through, and the precept increase, that's an extra 50. She's trying to do it. And we did mention about the levels of policing during the day. That was raised from another question about community team. You have community policing during the day. They're going out visiting schools and meeting people. They're taking in evidence. It's rapid response that cover a wider area, and then police cars in the evenings. It's a different type of policing. So there is a number of you wouldn't expect to have neighbourhood policing so high in the evening, where you expect them to have rapid response and actually get people out and do. And it's not just crime. It's if you have someone's lost in a road traffic accident, it's the police that have to turn up to inform the family. It's a very challenging job. They have to deal with various problems, and we know this year we've had loss of life from the police where they have been taking part in trying to protect the public at road traffic accidents. So I can't say it's been excellent how those two cases were dealt with, but what I do think is good is that they were able to pass it on to the police and crime commissioner, and it is going to be investigated, and hopefully other people won't have to go through the same thing again.
Yeah, I think the key thing there was, as Martin himself said, it'll be interesting to see if in a year's time what the changes are, what the improvements are. And sorry, my introduction was slightly wobbly at the beginning. It was Brian who was waiting for his wife to come home, and it was Martin was talking about a different situation. Sorry.
I think one of the things that did to reassure people that were at the meeting is when Donna announced the new police. Previous police and crime officer had very much siloed it into different stations and away from the public. Donna announced that she is opening a new desk in Cosham with the fire station. There'll be a police desk in there so people can pop in and talk to the police and report it, and she wants to see more of that, and looking at getting stations opened up elsewhere in the city. So it's bringing back policing into the community. I think that'll be a positive step where people can pop in. People don't always like to deal with on the phone. Like I know with myself and I said, well, can't we do it in person rather than over the internet? And it's like people do like to have that face-to-face thing, and very well they can go in and talk about it. So I think Donna's recognised that, taken it up from speaking to people, and is actually introducing it. So I'm pleased. That's one positive we definitely will have in a year's time.
Okay, well, we look forward to how that plans out and to see that come into effect. Was there anything else you wanted to say on that one, Ian, or should we move on to the?
No, I guess the only other question for me is for those that weren't at the meeting, Lee, were those questions kind of a fair indication of the kind of issues that people were raising? Obviously, Simon and I are both local, and there seems to have been a lot of attempted car crime. What would possibly be considered to be sort of nuisance crime, but has quite a large impact on on how safe people feel in their homes.
Yeah, it's the perception of crime as much as anything can be debilitating. It's one of the interesting things I took away from the meeting. 48% of the vehicle crime was done through opportunism, where people had left their cars open. They're trying handles where people have shut the cars at slower. You do get, I think it was 11% was one where they smashed a window, 15% where they forced it. But 48% was where they'd literally left the car door open. Someone's come along opportunistic and tried it. So it's all things we can try and do to improve it and make a difference.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of speaks a bit to Martin's point, wasn't it? Was that seemed to be the area being cased out for the opportunity to come and see, okay, where are they revisiting? And I guess the $64 million question is, what can be done to make advantage of that bit of intelligence from residents like Martin, to mean that actually when, and I'm going to use when the bad guys come back, that they get stopped. I guess that's the thing. So it'll be interesting to see what develops to that. But I think it's an interesting point that even in this day and age, when lots of public facing roles in like the service industry are all, they're all remote, or they're being dealt with by apps or things like that, or you can email things in. What seemed to be quite a theme in the concerns that residents were raising was that works in some situations, and even in policing that works in some situations, but in others there's almost like this kind of middle spot where the piece of information is time sensitive, but it isn't, the resident was already kind of grading it themselves and saying, this isn't kind of like a 999 thing, this isn't I need someone right now, but this is, so that's, I guess that's kind of the area to work in. But like you say, an in-person desk will also help with people that either would much prefer to speak to someone in person, or for those sorts, because there are lots of things that don't work well on email, that you can't have a conversation that way. You need to speak to someone. And
it is something else that Donna raised in the meeting was that during lockdown she was taking on a lot of the staff who had previously worked for the travel industry, the cruise companies in Southampton, and it was able to bring them forward, get them into the call centre, so they've got more time to talk to people, they can be more compassionate. It's not just the robot, they can actually deal with people in a better way. So it's improving the public relations. But the open desk, I think, will be a huge thing. A lot of people feel happier, to speak to someone in person. They can see the face, read the reactions, and so I think it's a very good thing that she's listened to the public. She cares about what the public think and how to improve it, and she is actually out there trying to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think it was very positive that, I think, generally all the feedback that I've seen, online and on the local forums, I think we're very appreciative of the meeting, and the fact that as you say, sometimes, Lee, there's an element of, if you press the email, you press send on the email, you don't know whether it's going into the ether. But I think residents genuinely felt heard by Wednesday's meeting.
Yeah.
The gauntlet is raised to make the difference, and that's the thing. So yeah, but it'd be good to see. But it's good to see that there's listening, from yourself and from Donna to kind of make that difference. So so I don't know if we've sorry.
I think I was just if we're moving on to the next question about what have I done to sort out police, improve crime.
Yeah. I didn't know whether Ian was interrupting me, whether there's something I'd missed, but I was going to kind of segue that into, okay, so how will residents be assured that the community is going to be safer? And I know we've probably touched on it in the responses that we've just had, but if there's more you want to expand on, then please do.
We do listen to residents, we do take on board what they said. So one of the schemes that we worked on last year, we went out and interviewed people, found out what their concerns were. The perception of crime can be debilitating. If women can't go out at night, older persons don't feel safe leaving the house, that is just as bad effect as the actual crime when it happens. So we're very lucky we were able to bid into a pot of money that Donna was controlling, or I brought about, for safer streets for women in particular. And we did a bid through with the council to get funding for the CCTV in the Portsmouth underpass. We worked with Highways England to get the repainted and decorated and improve the lighting to try and make it feel safer, because we spoke to a couple of ladies in the Highways who said they actually got at night they'll actually get a taxi round because they didn't feel safe using the underpass. We were grateful that we managed to get the funding from Donna to put in the cameras, so there's 4 cameras there looking through, and we probably noticed, I saw it in the news, that the rapist had alleged rapist down in Hillsley. It was a CCTV footage of him going through the underpass that enabled them to then go public, and he's now been caught and under investigation. So it's things like that where it's made a difference, and it's sad that it happened, but it's good that it's made the underpass safer and it's helped bring someone to justice. So we've also got the vehicle activated signs we've got going up in the Highburies, paid for by still money. Myself and Matt have been very keen to put forward, and Hannah was involved before, whilst we've had another councillor has tried to block it and tried to put a whole no object to the money. I think that'll make a difference having the 6 signs go up. They're shown to reduce speed by an average 20%, and it's something that does get raised with us a lot as a concern. So it also gathers the evidence and records the speed, so it gives you further evidence if you need to do something in the future. But those changes, I think, will make a big difference for people. If it can bring it down, the speed difference, if it can improve life, it's worthwhile doing.
Thank you. So there's something there to moving forward. Ian?
Yeah, I guess I find that it is that. Do you feel like, and again, slightly, the old-fashioned neighbourhood watch, has the sort of social media element kind of overtaken that, or do you think there's still a place for that looking out for each other from the local community?
I think people do look out for each other in the community. Things have moved on. We've got new technologies. It's not the old system where you can remember back on The Good Life, the sitcom where you have someone there organising it. I think we all can take part, and it might be 5 minutes where you look out and check on your neighbour, notice if their milk's been taken in or not, bits and pieces. But it's also like we do track down, and as mentioned earlier about the PO6 Highburies Facebook group, people are always posting up there. They're posting when they've got stuff they're giving away, but they also post if they've seen something happening, and something that Donna had actually raised at the meeting is there's alerts process. I've got it on my Facebook page, a link to it, but you can sign up for Hampshire Constabulary with the alerts, and if there's a series or spate of attempted crimes in an area, they will message through to you and let you know. So it's a bit like you were saying about what people should be told. It's trying to work towards that. It's in its infancy, but I think it's worthwhile trying to use it and go forward.
Again, it all sounds very positive, and it's that element of, again, I think, one thing that sort of struck me within the story, the first story that was told, was the fact that, the person had taken what we would probably describe as the reasonable precaution of having the Ring doorbell, having CCTV, captured the images, and I think that's, I think that's possibly why they were so disappointed in terms of that lack of response, because, as a homeowner, there are, there's only a limited and proportionate amount of things that you can do. And it was touched on in the second story, wasn't it, that if the homeowner would have intervened, the almost the crime would have escalated, and the homeowner possibly would have been on the wrong side of the law. So I think, it is about making sure that messaging in terms of reasonable precautions are taken, but also to remind people of where that line sits.
Again, it's a perception crime. When things go wrong, it's dreadful, and the system is only as good as its weakest link. But the vast number of cases where it has worked, things have gone according to plan, the police have done the correct job, you don't you don't get people crying about those. It's a bit like in a restaurant, they can serve 99 meals perfectly. No one's going to go to the effort of going online and writing a review saying how wonderful they are. They get one meal wrong, that person will be the one that goes online to raise the concerns and give them the poor review. So whilst we do want it to be perfect every time, we do have to bear in mind they are working towards it, and it's
Yep.
taking the feedback and how they can improve it is key.
Well, I think that is that's very truly, isn't it, the indicative, particularly on social media and even in the mainstream media now, bad news sells much better than good news.
Yes.
It does. We're getting a couple of comments there. We had one comment that's sharing a story about how they were assaulted on a bus, and although there would have been CCTV, it didn't really kind of go that far with, rather than proactively the police actually chasing it. So it's kind of a similar story to the ones that we've kind of already talked about. So although they weren't necessarily massively, badly hurt, it still has a profound effect on your daily life. And I could see Councillor Rob New has also put in about things being better with people looking after each other, with using some of the technology that we have got, things like WhatsApp groups as well as Facebook, and enabling communities to help each other out, as well as all the negative things that we're familiar with on social media. There are things like that, but people do want to feel safe in their homes and their community, and feel that they get the appropriate response when there is a crime, and there's a response to deal with the crimes, because our homes are our sanctuaries, and perception is everything. And it's quite right. You said it's not just actually about the actual crime, it's actually the fear of it, isn't it? So
that can be more debilitating than the actual reality. It is, if you can't live your life because of the fear of it, that is equally bad.
Yeah. For those of us watching the live stream, do excuse Ian's cat that is deciding to trying to hog the shot.
Yeah, Enid Blyton is never shy at getting herself into shot. It's so there we have it. So so Lee, obviously, we appreciate you coming on, and we're never one to miss an opportunity. So we're just going to change a little bit of tack now away from the crime meeting, and ask you a couple of questions around some of those pertinent issues in Cosham that are floating around at the moment. And it's been well publicised that probably one of the largest GP surgeries will be closing in Cosham, and their patients will be shared out amongst some of the different surgeries. And that letter came through this week with 4 options on there. A Drayton Group, one that had an outpost in Cosham, but 2 were a bit further afield in sort of Copner and Baffins and down in town. As a local councillor, how concerned are you that people are going to struggle to access a GP, even if they can get through on the phone?
It's something that we have been keeping an eye on. Penny has been great leading on this. I've had several meetings with her and NHS Health Watch. She's been having meetings with Secretary of State. It's been really high on our horizon. It was very much out of the blue. We were looking forward to having a new Cllr surgery that was going to be operated by North Harbour on the Spur Road roundabout next to the new fire station. It was all progressing towards that, and it was a very healthy surgery. Due to personal problems for some of the doctors involved, which I don't think will be fair to go into, it has very sadly come to a rapid end, with only 2 doctors being able to continue on process. It wasn't feasible. I think the NHS, the first thing they were looking at is seeing how they could split up, and with the big mega practices. So I signed up with the Portsmouth practice that now comes under Portsdown practice, which includes Cosham Park House, and that's my surgery. I know the difficulty of getting in there. We've got the Drayton surgery, which, like you say, has an outpost in Wootton Street. Something that Penny has really been pushing firm for is with the she's got the funding for the Cllr project to still go ahead, and that's trying to be expedited to see if it can get done within 12 months. But the Drayton small outreach, Wootton Street, it has got added capability. They're taking out the other offices from in there, so it will all become for the doctors. And Penny has sourced funding for porta cabins, high quality ones, so they actually could be put on the site. So it is a possibility it could be taken over from there, and patients could move up then to the new Cllr site once it's completed. So I was out on the streets with her speaking to some of the residents yesterday, and people haven't been told that they do have that option, and the work that's been done with Drayton surgery, the NHS started the process of just trying to split people out, and they are further afield as well. So I think 600 of the patients actually live in Portchester at North Harbour, so they will be given information about doctors that way. And we also had some of them do live in the south of the city. People don't tend to move their doctors when they move. I think there's even some up in Petersfield where they'd obviously sign up the doctor and either working or living away. So it's, some have taken advantage of the doctor surgeries down and backends, but I think a lot of people need to know there are facilities, there's other options that could go forward. And it's great that Penny has been proactive, and she's been in meeting the surgery staff. She's been really chasing on this, and I've been pleased to be able to help her with it.
And that's really good news, Lee, because I think, again, we got our letters on Tuesday or Wednesday, and it was that, there was Cosham Park and there was Drayton, which you kind of, well, we could make that work. But the other two kind of looked like a little bit of a Trojan horse in terms of, well, we've given you a choice of 4. And I kind of thought, well, whilst I have nothing against Baffins, it's not on the way. No, that's good news. And let's keep on.
9,000 patients need to be rehoused, and we're saying you can't just split. It's far better if we get the final solution working, even if it's out of temporary buildings, until Cllr is built, and it's a better way to progress forward. I think 4,500 being put into a new putting onto an existing surgery is going to be a lot of pressure. So hopefully it will get resolved. But I know Penny has really gone above and beyond, meeting with Secretary of State, meeting with the Health Watch, meeting with the NHS, and meeting with the staff at North Harbour.
Perfect. Thank you, Lee. So,
quite literally, in other developments, so previously on the show, we'd done an episode looking at there's a much, and it was actually referred to in the meeting on Wednesday. There's an opportunity to redevelop the area to the east of Cosham High Street, currently where the fire station, the police station, the community centre, and the health centre sit. And there was talk of the plans for there. So we've spoken about that kind of previously. What are residents telling you that development should be, and what their concerns are?
First of all, it's to the west of the Cosham High Street, so it's to spot the deliberate error.
Yeah, well, spot the. Oh God, there we go. My sense of direction is completely pot. Who couldn't? Yeah. Right. My apologies. Yes, it is to the west of the High Street, but thank you very much.
Yeah,
that's north and west. Thanks.
There was plans about 750 properties there, and then Gerald, the leader of the council, was saying, "Oh, we put 960 or even more there." Just not feasible. It's far more than was in the ill-fated Portsdown estate, which didn't work and then had various problems before it was bulldozed. So it needs to be sustainable. We've, by really putting pressure on it, we got down to 450. We think that's still far too high. I think it needs to go down more. 370 would be the very max that you could cope with there. Parking must be included. To say, oh no, people won't drive. People might not drive every day, but people do still tend to want to have a car, and that will be parked up on the road for 4 days. Parking should be included in the lower floors, and I think that is a real necessity. The replacement of the toilets, there's not many toilets on the mainland in Portsmouth, and I've often been out campaigning or door knocking in an area and had to scurry off to Wootton Street. You don't really like to knock on people's doors and say, well, thank you for giving me your voting intention. Would you mind if I pop in and use your loo? It sort of doesn't go down well. So, and I've been there when buses have pulled up and the bus drivers hopped out and run in, and you normally have a whole load of taxis running to use the toilet. So there's a lack of toilet provision. That is one of the key things that needs to be re-provided. Community centre is very well used and beloved. The replacement community centre needs to be built before the old one is shut. None of this site, oh, we'll knock it down and we'll build a new one in 2 years' time. You lose groups, you lose different people who get together. They either stop attending or they find somewhere else to go. You can't expect like the flower arranging or the gardening club or the embroidery or even the chess club to suddenly re-spring up into action 2 years later. So that's something I did raise it the last time I was on. We need to have that confirmation that the new community centre we built before the old one is touched. And I think the other thing that people are raising with us is the concerns over flooding. Salisbury Road, Knowsley Road has had flooding. The whole area there, right across up until North Harbour, up the hill, all comes under the same drains that then head out, and it's putting the pressure on there. With the changes at KG5 and tarmacking over that, and it's all being pumped the water into the sewage system. The additional 370 will put pressure on it. 960 will completely destroy it. That amount of extra sewage and water going into the system, it will have its huge effect. So, and as was said on Wednesday, Donna is looking at ways she can get the police back into use there. They're in Medina House, but she wants more space for them and wants to again get people out into the area. So she's looking at if she can get either the whole police station back or parts of it to put into use.
Okay, so there's lots of things to consider then. And where kind of is that down the line? Is that kind of still pie in the sky? Is it plans being submitted, or what kind of part?
No plans have been submitted yet. I think we're still very early stages. Like the suggestion, it's like, oh well, perhaps we don't need to do high clear and we can just rely on having a surgery go in on a new. It's like, well, I think it could be 2030 before we actually see the buildings being open there. Very earliest, I'll probably say 2027. It is very in early stages, but we're putting the pressure on to make sure it is shaped in the right way. It does move forward. Parking is considered, but it doesn't seem to have had a lot of impetus moving forward. So,
okay, thank you.
So another development, the council's recently announced that it's doubling its solar power on council buildings. What's your view on that?
I'm actually quite delighted. 9 years ago, when I came in as a cabinet member for resources, at the time we were minority administration and we were looking for quick improvements, and found that we didn't have any solar panels on any of the council buildings. It was expected to be a 4-year return, and it was always seen as too long term to actually invest money in. So I was happy to sign off whole loads of schemes. And I kept going all the time we were in power, putting solar panels on anything that hadn't moved for a few weeks, stick some solar panels on it. Energy uses in the city, it's good to have energy creation in the city. We need to have a mixed bag. I don't think everything's going to be solar, because obviously we have night, and not everything we wind. We need to look at nuclear, other options as well. But we've had the cities. Sorry?
Not in Portsmouth though, right?
Not in the centre of Portsmouth, no.
No,
but we can do solar panels.
Wow.
Somewhere.
We can do solar panels here because we've got roofs.
Yeah.
We got the roofs. So we're very keen we should get that installed. It actually turned out it was a 3-year return. It made money even quicker than we thought.
Wow.
And it's been a great success. We went from being a city with no solar panels on our own buildings to having the highest number, and I think we're the #1 city for green energy production, which is great. So I'm keen. And with the doubling effect, I spoke to some of our officers who had worked with me in doing the first phases, saying, well, can we move the solar panels off the civic offices if the plan changes go ahead and it's knocked down and a new one built? And they said, well, actually, we'll just recycle them and put new ones on, because the improvement has been so high in the last few years for solar energy production. The ones we were laying out 9 years ago are now out of date. They can get so much more production with the new solar panels. So just updating it, recycling the old ones, getting out the precious metals and the glass and everything else, and having new ones will improve production. So it is very much achievable to double the amount we produce. And I'm glad that some guy started a few years back has worked so well. And one of the stats we say about the 150 balloons filled up by the chuff turn it off at the traffic lights, the amount of pollution that is produced from our plants producing energy, it's about 10 meters deep across the whole UK over a year if it was all put out once. So for clean air, for better living, as long as it's done in a sensible way, solar panels are great, but not the only solution. You do need to have a balance of for when the sun's not shining and the wind doesn't blow.
Yeah, indeed, that's sensible. but I just wanted to give you that out there, that you weren't suggesting that someone built a nuclear power station in Portsmouth, because
No.
that's not a vote winner, I don't think.
No.
Okay. Right. So with and one of the places that that the solar panels are going to go is the car park at council-owned Lakeside, but as an office complex, they're discovering that, you know, many office-based businesses are discovering the work from home or hybrid model. And what does that say about the future for sites like the council-owned Lakeside? It's, you know, it's great putting solar panels over the carports in the car park or whatever, etc. But what about the future of those sites themselves? What have you got to say about those?
Whilst the use there did drop during the lockdown, it's actually gone up. We've had more tenancy going in. We've had larger companies moving to Lakeside and seeing its potential and their future. Working from home is great when you have an established team who all know each other. When you have new apprentices start or you have new people come on the team, they need to get to know each other. You do need to have your face-to-face meetings. I was saying earlier about having the police station, people do like to do things face-to-face. So there are new businesses moving in there. There's some new large companies moving in. So I think it's actually starting to look bright again. And even if people only work in the office 3 days a week or 2 days a week, seems to be a lot more of a hybrid. We've not gone completely back onto online. People go in for a couple of days, have their meetings, and if you were having to meet a new client, you probably want to do it in an office premises rather than have your own kitchen table and sort of moving the kids' homework out the way to put the paperwork down. So I think there's still going to be a need for office space, and we have to talk up pots. If it'll be easy for me to try and attack Gerald on him trying to follow our successes of plans and talk up Portsmouth, talk up Cosham, and Lakeside has got a great potential for the future.
Okay, cool.
If all else fails, they'll build houses all over it. So
yeah, not going to be turned into flats quite yet, hopefully.
I think in the city plan though, they had planned to build 500 there. So
I think the city plan has in your to copy your analogy of you know, if it stands still for more than 4 days, stick a solar panel on it. I think the city plan basically says, you know, if somebody can lay down and spread their arms, we can probably build something on it. So yeah, I think there is that element of you know, the city plan just says keep cramming them in. And I think, you know, as you touched on when we talked about the Cosham development, you know, it's not just about having the space to be able to put a building in, it's everything that comes with it, isn't it?
it's the schools, it's the, as been said, the GP surgeries, it's the infrastructure of the buses, and the sewage. It takes a lot to actually make a community work.
Perfect. Now, this is probably the most vital question of the whole podcast, and I know that's one that our listeners will be hanging on the outcome of. As we head towards May, Simon's touched on it. It will be our annual hustings, which have grown in popularity and coverage since we started it nearly 3 years ago. Will we be able to count on Lee Mason, councillor for Cosham, putting their name down for the hustings this year?
It's possible. It's possible. I'm not going to rule it out. We like to have this nice image of it all across Cosham. They're all watching in tonight with to see what I'm up to and to hear my wise words given out to them. And in reality, it's probably politicos from all over Portsmouth who have tuned in to see if I've not got my seatbelt on or if I've got the wrong LED low energy light bulbs in the background. So it's always an interesting situation. So I hope to do it, but I'm not gonna. I'll wait and see.
You're going to remain on that fence for a little bit longer.
He's teasing. He's teasing us.
He has. Yeah, no. To be fair,
he's giving us Schrodinger's hustings response.
Yeah,
He's
both going and not going at the same
time. Yeah. No, and
it's making you want me. That's the
absolutely. He says creating a sense of anticipation.
Yeah. Well
if
done.
If I may quote the great Tim Curry.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, we'd love to have you on, Lee, as you know, and the danger, of course, of sitting on the fence on this one is if you do it for long enough, somebody will apply a solar panel to you.
I could do with the cheap energy at the moment, so yes.
Absolutely.
Actually, we could all do it.
This is true. This is true. Well, we look forward to your when you whatever decision you make, of course. So obviously you've had lots of conversations with residents, both at the meeting on Wednesday and as you've been out and about, and your inbox will be bulging, I'm sure, with lots of emails and as you're out and about canvassing. So what are the 3 things that residents are mentioning to you, and what's being done about that? So what's the top 3?
I think one of the biggest ones is actually planning issues or licensing issues. It's saying earlier, things that are close to home really affects people. So they can't all afford to have get planning lawyers or things. As councillors, we undergo planning training, so we understand how development control works. We understand the systems, what you need to apply for, what you don't need to apply for, the process subject. The same for licensing when people have a pub next door to them wants to apply for something, or the school buses. And it's one of those things that residents come to me. We then advise them how they can make a complaint. Point out to them, it's like, well, you're not going to say it's about parking or your view. It's about your loss of air, or it's about your overlooking, and we make sure they're objecting under the right issues, rather than just, I don't want it. You have to say, well, why don't you want it? How's it going to affect you? What's the legal ground? And it's one of those things that we can provide assistance. I've had a few, and we can also ask for it to go to plan committee. It's something that affects people desperately. People a couple of doors away might not care, but for you, it is everything about your home. It's your life, and that is one of the things that we can do to help. And I can say, with the training we receive, we have a better knowledge than most people would.
Okay, so that attention to detail. So whether they can get their garage turned into an office, whether they can extend their extend out into their garden and have a lovely open plan kitchen or etc. and whatever they do. These things.
And the impact on the neighbours, and also making sure they do it to, even if it's permitted development, doing it to the correct standards. So they do have to do the plumbing in the correct way. The sewage has to be connected up in the correct manner so it doesn't impact the neighbours. So it's things we can all try and help with. Next one I probably have a lot of is the antisocial behaviour. I know earlier in the year at Medina Road Play Park, we had a real problem there with children coming into the area, attacking the bottle banks, having bottle fights, throwing them around. I had a lot of residents contact me about it. I was up there with our council team. We had the bottle banks moved. We put up the signs. I was there with the officers. Got home, I got phone calls that evening from residents saying at 7 o'clock the kids had turned up, found the bottle banks had been moved. They started ripping down all the signs. They went and got bottles from other areas and came back, and it was unbelievable. If I think I was writing a fiction story, I couldn't actually have come up with a scenario. Unfortunately, I was straight on at the council that evening saying this is what's happening, and then the next day, and we managed to get CCTV put up there, and then speaking to the residents, reassuring it wasn't looking into their bedrooms or bathrooms. It was I was able to show them the footage from it and show them this is what it's actually looking at, and they were relieved. So I think that is quite a large amount of our again, you don't get it when you don't get contact saying, oh, we've not had any problems in our road for a while, but if something does happen, you do hear about it. So I think that's one of the next biggest concerns.
Okay, cool. So Ian, did you have anything to? Oh yeah, sorry. I thought I'd like. I'm sure that was
changed him. You're one short.
Then your flow seemed to stop. So I thought, I'm sure I.
Oh no, I thought I'd get you opportunity to come in and grill me on that if you wanted to, or like what. No, a bit like the commercial advert during the our meeting the other night when the guys turned up talking about his cameras. But
yeah, it was quite interesting that. For any listeners that weren't there, there were interventions from a couple of people that weren't residents on the estate or indeed in the ward, but were, shall we say, representatives of different organisations that have some sort of involvement and opportunity to be gained from the security industry. And I'm not trying to say that they were basically there trying to sell their wares, but I think they were there trying to offer their services in kind of that regard. But not all residents were happy to hear from them instead of from other residents or from the police or from the Police and Crime Commissioner or from yourself. So
I hope we managed to balance it out on the at the meeting.
No, I think it was, at the end of the day, it's trying to control a crowd of people is I guess is always we have enough to deal with trying to deal with deal with podcast guests, especially in hustings, because they can get a bit feisty. But at the end of the day, it's worth listening to people. But there are some things that aren't really relevant to that meeting and need to be kind of taken outside of the meeting and dealt with differently. In modern business speak, people talk about that. Let's take that offline. Yeah, but those weren't the words that Donna used. But yeah,
I think she handled it well.
I think she did. She was ready to listen and willing to hear what they had to say, but wanted to give residents a chance to speak. And indeed, I think that was your intervention as well, was to say, look, we want to actually hear from the residents here. So because indeed they might well have services that are really useful, that are worth exploring. But nonetheless, so the third one, Lee. So bless you for giving me a chance to come back.
Recently, with what's been happening with North Harbour and dentistry, and we've got the new dentist. Penny did do her dentistry conference earlier in the year, and we've had the government pay for extras, so equivalent of 7,000 patients worth of dentistry to Portsmouth. I think those are the two things. So North Harbour closing and a new dentist, that has been my biggest mailbag, and I can't bump someone up the list for getting into the dentist, but I'm able to sort of signpost them to the new dentist that's coming in at North Harbour near the Tesco's, and also talking to people about the different options going forward and what the NHS have told them. It's an opportunity for us to explain more. So that's been the recent one, and we've actually had it on the doorstep as well. We were out over the last few days, people raising to us about the doctors. I think normally it would probably be parking in third place. So, but the last couple of weeks it has been doctors and dentists.
So if anything bumps parking out of the top three, then that is we live in interesting times indeed, Lee. So just in the interest of time, would like to thank you for hosting Wednesday's meeting. As I say, it was very well received by residents, and thank you for coming on. And we're going to hope that you tip off the fence and fall onto the side of coming onto the hustings in March or April. So, which would be grand. So you've been listening to the Pompey Politics podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And our guest has been
Councillor Lee Mason.
And I've been Simon Sansbury. Do join us at 6:27 live on Facebook, YouTube next week, when we've got former Labour PPC for Portsmouth North, Rumal Khan, coming on the show to talk about his 20 years in Portsmouth politics. And then the week after, we'll be looking into the changes to voter requirements that require you to bring photo ID to your polling place in May. So that's worth keeping track of to make sure that you aren't turned away, frustrated, unable to vote in May. You will need photo ID. So join us next week, 6:27, on the Pompey Politics podcast. Please do remember to like, follow, subscribe, send us cups of tea, biscuits, anything. That would be fantastic. And I've been Simon Sansbury.